And now, your official TigerBait live show with Mike Scarborough and Buddy Songi starts now.
All right, guys. You folks out there that have been sitting there, when does the show start? I'm scrolling down. You're not going to believe this. Charlie and I have been talking for 20 minutes, and for whatever reason, we were not live. And I'm not going to do the whole show, the first 20 minutes all over again, but we're going to dive into it. And we've been talking a lot of baseball. We're talking, but you know, it's just been he and I talking and answering your questions if we've seen them. And we didn't realize that for some reason we didn't register as live. So
it's the fact that Buddy's not here tonight. Did it crash the stream? I mean, what happened?
Absolutely crazy. I've never seen anything like it. And I kept looking at it and I'm wondering why I was not seeing the number of people in the chat. And then when I scrolled down, I saw that, hey, when are they going live? It's 8:20. And I'm like, oh boy. All right, guys. Yeah, we have started, but we're starting all over again. No technical problems. Big Honus Keller. Kenny Haynes must be having technical difficulties. I tell you what, so we don't rehash everything that you and I have been talking about by ourselves. Let's talk about Pro Day today. Anything that happened there, do you think helped anybody, hurt anybody? Malik Neighbors obviously got a big part of the publicity and what he did. I was, look, we know what he runs. I was kind of surprised at the 15 reps at 225 on the bench press. That's a big number for a guy his size.
I don't think that, if you didn't know about Malik Neighbors nationally, if you just get into the draft game now, he was going to make a lot of money before today. And all he did was solidify where he was. But I think something that's been kind of whispered for the last month kind of came more prominent today when Adam Schefter posted it, that there are teams out there that have him as the number one wide receiver in front of Marvin Harrison Jr. Now, I don't know if one of those teams is going to be picking when the run on the quarterbacks is done, because I expect that there's going to be some trades there in that top five. But if it is, I would say it's probably 2-1 that it's going to be Harrison over Neighbors, but I would give him a shot to be the number one receiver drafted. But if he's not, I can't see him getting past 6. I think probably the worst case scenario is that 4 quarterbacks go in the top 4 or 5 picks, and then Harrison goes. He's the next guy off the board. I guess maybe worst case scenario would be 7 if the Chargers decided to take a tackle like Joe Alt from Notre Dame. But he's not getting any further than that. And I think Brian Thomas, he didn't do too much today as far as the running and all that. But, man, he had a dynamite combine. I don't think he's getting much further than, say, 15 or 16. I think he's got a chance to go as high as 11 or 12. And I don't think he gets past 16 or 17. So the combine plus the pro day today for those 2 receivers has been fantastic news. And I thought Jaden Daniels, I can't see he's going to go number 1. The Bears seem to have their mind made up. But, boy, I could see him going number 2. In fact, if I had to guess right now, I'd say that there's a better chance that he's going to go 2 than Drake May will. But the possibility of trades, Minnesota, Denver, Las Vegas could all trade up for a quarterback, and they may have a different preference.
Well, that's, a few weeks ago, you started seeing people asking, could Daniels go over Caleb Williams? I know the Patriots seem to be showing a lot of interest in Jade Daniels, but you don't think he's going to be there when they want him. But he's in a great spot either way. I mean, he's about to make a ton of money.
I think the Bears have made their mind up on Williams, but I don't think anything else is set. I could see Washington taking Daniels. I could see him taking May. I could see Minnesota made a big move last week to acquire another number 1 draft pick. That's with the intent of moving up for a quarterback. So if Minnesota moves into that 2 spot or that 3 spot, who do they prefer? Las Vegas, another team that has a lot of draft capital that could move up if they wanted to for a quarterback. Denver, Sean Payton's never taken a starting quarterback. They're making a big deal out of that. Well, he had Drew Brees for 16 years. So I guess he didn't take a quarterback in the draft. They could move up. So those teams, if I'm the Patriots, I'll be honest with you. If the first 2 picks come out and it's Williams and it's Daniels, I hold an auction for that pick because there's going to be so much that teams would offer them for the right to draft the 3rd quarterback. There's a drop-off between the 3rd guy and the 4th guy. And I think Daniels is better than a better pro prospect than May is. And New England's not close to contending. So you trade out, you pick up extra first-round picks next year, maybe even the year after that. You slide down, you take another starter in this draft. For New England, a trade down makes a lot of sense. They signed Jacoby Brissett. They've got a quarterback for this year. And then you put that team around him. And then when you bring the quarterback in, he doesn't feel like he has to do it all by himself.
All right, guys, I'm going to owe Charlie a nice meal somewhere, because he and I were talking, and I think we were doing a great show for 20 minutes before we realized we weren't live. So I'll apologize for that. But we're 6 minutes in now. I finally see the clock, and you guys are in here. Please hit the like button if you're enjoying the show. And I'm going to keep Charlie till 9 o'clock like I promised. But we're going to get to as much of you guys' comments as possible. We did a whole thing on baseball. I guess we're going to do a part of that again. But let's see. Look at this. Casanova Hanny. Look at Mike big timing us. Yeah, bringing in Charlie. Big Cojones Kells blames Jacques Doucet for our issues getting logged in. Kenny Haynes must have been technical difficulties. Do not adjust your set. But we're here now. Fire 3449. Mike Neighbors ran a 4.35 and Brian Thomas Jr. ran a 4.33 elite speed. Did you see Duncanville High break the high school national record in 4x100? Yeah, I did. And that Duncanville High School pipeline and LSU being in there the way they are, obviously with Caden Durham going to show up in June, DeCorian Moore, everybody's going to be holding their breath until signing day that you can hold on to him. But I'm told everything's fine there as of now. So, but that's going to be what a job the LSU coaching staff has done there in maintaining that, because that school is going to have exceptional D1 athletes every single year. Let's see, scroll up. I'm going to go back to this one. Charlie and I answered this one while it was just he and I talking. Hey, Mike and Buddy, awesome pro day for the Tigers. Do you think a running back will emerge so we can stop this running back committee? Lady Tigers will get a rematch at Colorado. He thinks Iowa is going to fall by the wayside, and I do think that is a possibility. And but running back, we're going to find out. Watching what Frank Wilson is doing at practice, he's obviously wanting Caleb Jackson to know all the blocking assignments, pass protections. Durham will show up in June. I do think that they are going to look to the portal to bring in another running back. I think you need another one. And then, of course, for next year, waiting to see what James Simon's going to do at Calvary and committing. And, of course, already have Harlan Berry committed. So the running back room is going to be pretty stout. You're just one thin less than you would like when last year it was bursting at the seams.
Yeah, Mike, I don't think Frank Wilson and Brian Kelly want to abolish the committee. Remember that they're going to be taking almost all of the quarterback rushing attempts out of the equation. Nussmeier is only going to run just a little bit when he's got to and protections break down. It's going to be nothing like Jaden Daniels. So those carries have got to go somewhere. And I think they're going to go to multiple backs. You'll have like a committee chair with Caleb Jackson maybe. And we got to remember that he hasn't played a ton of football, didn't play his senior year in high school, and just played a little bit last year because he was behind some veterans. So he's still very much growing into the role. But I think you're going to see multiple guys with what I would call significant carries, not just mop-up carries. And I got to tell the story again. We told it on the air. I said, when I hear, well, he's got to learn the blocking schemes, I always think of the team Gene Stallings brought in here with Sean Alexander, and he says, I don't know if he's going to play because he doesn't know the blocking schemes. And Alexander didn't block an LSU Tiger the whole night, but he ran for 298 yards in that game in 1996. So teach him those plays, and we'll have somebody else pass block.
What do you remember what his rushing total was against LSU?
I think it was 297 or 298. It was right there. just under 300 yards. It's the most yards at that point that anybody had ever run for against LSU. Single
I pulled
person.
it up. I wanted to see if you nailed it. It was 291.
291. Okay.
Yeah, you're close. You got a great memory. For some reason,
That's what I like to forget.
for some reason, in my mind, he went over 300. I mean, but it was just it was terrible. Great for Alabama though. All right, let's scroll down, guys. If you got any baseball questions, Charlie's as good at baseball, LSU baseball as anybody. Get those in. Is there any news on Trey Holly? Castano asked. No, there's no news. I don't know what the legal process is and how long that's going to take, but it sure does seem the first few weeks after that all that took place, and that everybody I talked to out at LSU and Charlie, I'll let you chime in if you've heard the same. They sure do seem like that kid, once he has his day in court, he's going to get his life back.
It may very well happen that way, and I don't know what happened other than what I've read. I will say this: the one thing that the reason you probably haven't heard any news, he went on social media right after all this happened, and I spent 0 days in law school, but I know that whenever the lawyer got to him, probably the first thing he told him was, "Shut up. You don't say anything. You operate through me." We've seen this all the time. The lawyers take over. I was shocked. I would bet you anything that he posted that without asking anybody, because no lawyer in the world would have said comment on anything until we absolutely have to, and then I'll handle it. So my guess is that his legal counsel said, not a peep out of you until we get this resolved.
Fire 349, Mike, does Trey Hannibal have any eligibility left to play football? No, but he sure looks like he could be a linebacker or a running back, an edge rusher. He's got the build for it, that's for sure. Any news on men's basketball getting players in the portal? Nothing yet. I will fess up though. I've been spread a bit thin, covering spring football, baseball, and hitting all those pressers, and plus women's basketball. I have not. I need to plug in on men's basketball recruiting in the portal here soon. I don't know if you've heard anything, Charlie.
I've seen a couple of players that the way it seems to be announced with some of these guys in the portal is these are the schools that have contacted me. You get prospects that are posting that. And I've seen LSU on a number of those lists, but guys that they're close on, I couldn't tell you. They're going to have to the late signing period. I don't know if anybody's coming in there. I think it's going to be all portal guys to fill out the roster, and they're going to have a number of spots to fill. I think it was in the SEC tournament when they lost to Mississippi State, 174 to 200 possible minutes were played by guys who won't be back. Now, if Derek Fountain exercises his extra year, then kick in a few more. But the story is that most of the minutes down the stretch were played by guys who won't be on next year's team. You're going to have Reed, and you're going to have Mike Williams, and you're going to have a few of these guys, and Tyrell Ward. But you're going to have to bring in some guys. And man, look. The SEC is as good a basketball league as it has been since the 80s. And I can remember in the 80s when you had multiple NCAA tournament teams make runs almost every year. And it's really deep now. You got to have some pros on your team. And I don't know if those guys are out there right now.
I was in my vehicle last week, and I heard you and Jimmy talking about this topic. And I kind of agree with Jimmy a bit, and then I agree with you. He didn't want to give him any slack for his first year, and I think you were right to say that that's a little bit too far to go there. I tend to agree with what he says, and that really this was his first year. First year was just cobbling together a team to try and make a go of it and run through the schedule. I do think though the worry is when you've got the women's basketball team, gymnastics, football, baseball, all doing what they're doing. And, you know, I asked this question and then I found out that, look, you remember when Brady took over from Dale Brown, and I'll start asking myself, on probation, was it this bad? The morale of the fan base, the outlook, the perception of where it's heading, and I don't remember being it this bad. And I think the reason why is because you knew there was a Stromile Swift around the corner, and you saw, you know, you could always do that. You could look and say, boy, look at this recruiting class. You know, you've got, you know, one of those big timers like that. And then you had to run a Brandon Bass and, you know, in the Temples and right.
Mike, I remember it being much worse back then. And I'll tell you why. The probation that they went on in 1997 was a multi-year probation. They were down 5 scholarships total. And that was a big deal in 1997. There was also something back then called the 8 and 5 rule, which meant you could not take more than 5 players in any given year, 5 new players in any given year, and 8 over a 2-year period. All those rules are long since gone. But back then, you couldn't turn your whole roster over. And so what Brady did was he came in with, I want to say it was a 9 or 10 person recruiting class the year before all that went into play, and tried to ride it out the best he could with that. He didn't get Stromile and Jabari Smith in that group until really 2000, or late. Stromile came in halfway through the 99 season. But he didn't really have what I would call a full complement of everything until that Sweet 16 team in 2000. What's different here is you can turn the whole team over. You almost have to. And there's no restrictions on how many people you can bring in. The transfer portal is a lot more liberal than it was in 1997. But mostly this is about NIL.
But also, too,
if you don't have the NIL dollars, it doesn't matter how many scholarships you've got available to you. So that's where I think that the effort's got to come. They've got to get into their fundraising, and they've got to get that NIL budget up. And one more thing. This is a much more difficult situation for McMahon from a homegrown recruiting standpoint. There's not a Stromile Swift in the state.
You got the kid at Newman.
One, the kid at Newman, okay?
And so that's where there's a light at the end of the tunnel, and he's class of 25, Charlie. And what is, if you don't get him, if he goes somewhere else?
Mike, from the year that McMahon got the job through that young man, you're going to have to help me with his name. He's the big kid out of Newman. Cenac, yeah. Through his year where he signs, he's the only top 100 player in Louisiana. That's 4 years. That's 400 prospects at the top 100, and only one of them's from Louisiana. Back when we were talking about in those late 90s, Taurus Bright was a very highly rated player out of Louisiana, came to LSU. Brandon Dean, who went to Arkansas, was a top 100 guy. Chris Duhon, who went to Duke, was a top 100 guy. There was a lot more in-state high school talent in the 90s than there is now. So that makes McMahon's job doubly tough. He doesn't have the benefit of a local kid like Brandon Bass, a great example. Grew up here in Baton Rouge, or Glenn Davis,
or Tyrus Thomas, who you signed and grew 6 inches in the offseason.
That kid, if he's out there, is going to have to be a late bloomer or transfer in from another state, because right now that kid doesn't exist.
Well, so it is different in that there's the NIL component, and we'll see if LSU's going to have the ability to compete for national 100 players that aren't from Louisiana. But Cenac is the marker. If you don't get him and you have similar home crowds, actual attendance like you had this past season, next year, I don't know how long they go.
He's got to recruit better. He's got to recruit better at the high school level. He's got to recruit better in the portal, with the transfers, and it's all NIL, Mike. That's just
and I'll say this: if they can get that, because I don't, in my mind, I don't think there's any doubt that he's a hell of a coach.
He got as much out of that roster as he could. Nine SEC wins out of that roster was a job well done on the bench. Now he's got to back that up with a good job in the living room and in the portal.
Absolutely. Fire 3449. Mike, which will be more impressive? Mulkey repeats, softball wins the national championship, or gymnastics? Man, those are all impressive.
They're all impressive. The most, I think, unlikely one is softball. Even with the great start that they got out to, that league is so loaded. I mean, and then Oklahoma's coming in next year. Oklahoma's kind of owned the sport. They're not quite as good this year. I think that would be the toughest one.
Then softball lost.
Been on the cusp for a long time. Right there.
Softball lost the fabulous third baseman Coffey with the knee, and that was a blow.
Yeah, that hurt.
But
they're really good. You know, they could get to Oklahoma City. You got to be really good. You got to be a little bit lucky, and the injury wasn't lucky. But I think that's the toughest. I think that's the toughest one. And I say that with South Carolina and Iowa and others still and UConn still in the women's bracket, and 2 other number 1 seeds besides that. So you're right; they're all tough.
All right. Well, we're brought to you by our title sponsor, Pride Roofing, each and every week. Let's hear from Mike and Alex.
Hi, I'm Michael.
I'm Alex.
At Pride Roofing, we handle commercial and residential work.
TPO, shingle, and metal inventory.
We got it. Property still in disarray from the recent hailstorm. Insurance claims?
No problem. But you know Pride Roofing is the official roofer at TigerBait.com.
In fact, notify TigerBait, and we'll give you a free roof inspection. And on top of that, you get a free year subscription. Call 855-PRIDE-16. Se habla español.
All right, you heard Mike there. Say TigerBait when you call 855-PRIDE-16 with your free roof inspection. They're going to pay for it. You have TigerBait Premium free for a year. They pay the bill. That's a $99 value, and so it's free all the way around just to get them to come out, commercial, residential, and nobody does it better than Pride Roofing. Mike Faraday, of course, a Broadmoor High LSU grad, and I grew up with him, and no finer people. And look, a lot of bad weather, hail damage. They keep at least 200 roofs worth of shingles in their yard, all of it high end, no builder grade roofing materials that's used, and they manufacture a lot of it themselves. So give them a call at Pride Roofing. Guys, if you're enjoying the show, hit that like button. Here's one for you, Charlie. It says, Charlie, has your hatred of Alabama cooled down at all since Nick retired?
No. I never hated Nick. Mike, you were here. I covered Saban every day for 5 years. Okay, I had a fine working relationship with him. My frustration comes with Alabama, comes with the favoritism that I thought the league showed them. And you know, here we went. I'm not saying this one's Alabama's fault, but they flopped over another 8-game schedule. Now, this time it doesn't have to do with Alabama, but for so many years it did. And I never thought that was fair. I just thought that they got a few too many extras where the league was concerned in scheduling. So that was my problem with them. And yes, it's aggravating that they had such a dominant run over LSU. But I never hated Saban. I'm looking forward to – I hated that his teams beat LSU, but I'm looking forward to seeing him on the air. Because now that he doesn't have an area to protect, I think when you just get him talking football, man, it's great. I remember one press conference, Mike, it was after practice one day. Buddy will remember this story. It was, probably 6 or 8 of us in there after practice. And it was when Maurice Clarett was trying to go pro after his freshman year at Ohio State. And I asked Saban if he thought any college freshman was ready to play in the NFL. And not only did he say no, but he went into a whole list of reasons why and how ownership would get involved, and told some stories when he was with the Cleveland Browns. And he almost never did that. But when he did, man, he was fascinating to listen to because he's so incredibly smart. I'm looking forward to hearing some stories like that he wouldn't tell when he's the head coach at Alabama, but will that he's on a game day set, I think.
Brad, thank you for that super chat. Charlie, just had the 20-year anniversary of the 2003 national championship. So would it be a 25 or a 30 where there might be an opportunity for Nick Saban to be a part of it now that he's not coaching during the season? But maybe he'll be working on a game day set and on a game weekend, and that still makes it impossible. But are we getting now that he's retired, is it better for the 25 or does it need to be the 30? And what kind of reception do you would think if he was down on the field waving at the in between quarters for something like that?
If Nick Saban walked out with the 2003 national champions, they'd get a thunderous ovation in Tiger Stadium. Now, you might have some people saying I'm clapping for the team and I'm still mad at him, but they get a tremendous ovation. And listen, I don't care for Alabama for the reasons I just talked about, but this LSU program is where it is in large part because of Saban. A lot of the things that are in place in the athletic department were put in by Saban. A lot of ideas changed around here because of Saban. I can't tell you how the reaction when he came in and suggested there be a football operations building built, and the horror-stricken look on the administration's face, like, you want us to build what? And that's commonplace now, but it wasn't at the time. He changed so much about LSU, and he deserves a credit for that. And I still don't like Alabama, and I still wish he had done something else. But he deserves a lot of credit for what started getting built here in 2000.
And you're absolutely right, because there a lot of the procedures and the way of doing things was carried over through multiple coaching staffs.
Yes.
And
the freshman being available last year under Brian Kelly, or in Kelly's first year, I think was the first time a couple of spots where a quarterback had gotten in. The first time freshmen had been allowed to talk to the media. That was a policy that Saban put in. He brought with him from Michigan State because Plaxico Burress mouthed off to Michigan in 1990, whatever, and he said, that's it, no more freshmen talk to the media. That policy was in place for 22 years, I think. And that's just one example. There are others, but that's one of the ones I remember.
No, but I'm talking about even the day-to-day stuff inside the building.
Yeah,
that stuff was carried over, and it was largely because a lot of the people inside there were the same. That stuff really didn't change from Saban to Miles to Orgeron. It was until Brian Kelly came in, and rightly or wrongly, everybody's got somebody that they think he should have kept and shouldn't have cut loose. But a lot of the procedures that were from the Saban era had been carried on. The
equipment staff, the video staff, those two have remained largely intact. Yeah, at least up at the top.
Right. All right. Let's see. Wasn't Corey Chest a highly ranked Louisiana kid?
He wasn't in the top 100 that I remember.
The last highly rated Louisiana basketball player was Brian Thomas.
Yeah, the ratings I looked at, he wasn't in the top 100. And maybe he'll be a good player for LSU next year.
I mean, Will Wade will tell you right now, until this CNAC kid, the last great Louisiana basketball player, played football, and that was Brian Thomas.
Yeah, and I think before him, the last top 50 Louisiana kid, I'm pretty sure was Javonte Smart. So you're going back a little bit now for a top 50 guy.
Kenny Haynes says, I'll bite on the baseball question. To what do you attribute Kling's issues at the plate, Charlie Hanagriff?
I got no idea. I know he's a bit of a free swinger to be up at the top of the lineup. He doesn't maybe work counts as much as they'd like, but I can't explain for an SEC play. There may be a little bit of bad luck. He hit a ball with the bases loaded in a game 2 of the Florida series. Man, if the wind's not blowing in just so much, Mike, maybe that ball gets out and he gets a grand slam and maybe he goes on a tear, but he's just fighting it right now. I'm not a good enough of a hitting coach to tell you why. I just know he is. I know sometimes him and Brady Neal as well. Sometimes it's that little dink hit, the one that, he hit that ball that should have got out pretty good, but it was an out. Sometimes you hit a little dribbler that, rolls past the pitcher's mound, and then it just everything opens up. You get a little bloop single out past the second baseman, and then you go on a 7 for 12 tear or something like that. But it's got to happen at some point. But I don't have a good explanation for why he's struggling right now.
John Sibley Butler said there's a kid in Shreveport that's 6'10" who can play. He's a senior, and everyone says he's not aggressive. He signed with Louisiana Lafayette. I think his name is Evans. Yeah, Jeremiah Evans, he says, is the player from Shreveport. Southwood, and he says should have been recruited by LSU. I know that I forget his name. I know the Cajun star player, their number one guy, hit the portal last week, and I think it's just going to be the nature, particularly at mid majors like that. You can have a kid who's homegrown and you think's all your school, and you know, the thing that's really rampant, Charlie, that no matter what they do legislatively or what the NCAA or the SEC does, the amount of tampering that's going on out there is it's all tampering. You know, some of the kids know to get in the portal because of what's on the other side, regardless of how well they've got it at their particular school. And then you hear Lane Kiffin today talking about how bad it is and how he's going to play the game. What's the running back that just left there and now he's coming back?
Judkins?
Yeah. I mean, he's talking about wanting to come back now, right?
Well, and the two players that went to Iowa and Ohio State from Alabama, Downs and Proctor, are trying to come back. Kiffin's got a point here. He says, there's nothing to stop a kid in football from saying he wants him to transfer portal after the season, getting his bag of money, going to that school, and then saying, I want to go back to my original school before he ever plays it down. There's nothing in paperwork that prohibits him from doing that. It's been suggested a few times that if you were really smart and a real mercenary, you should be recruited 4 times. You should sign out of high school, and the next 3, you should transfer 3 times so you can maximize your value. And it's just not how we grew up watching the sport. But if you're a businessman, you say, well, what's the best way I can make the most money? Kiffin's got an absolute got a point here.
Guys, I want to talk about one of our newest sponsors, KnowNaturals. Tiger fans, get ready for dispensary grade gummies delivered discreetly to your door with KnowNaturals. Our gummies are super fast acting. In just 15 to 30 minutes. Experience a new level of wellness without needing a doctor's recommendation. Crafted with dispensary grade, top shelf quality cannabinoids, adaptogens, and terpenes, KnowNaturals offers a variety of gummies tailored to your needs. Try BLISS with Delta 9 THC for a euphoric lift, energy with CBC and cordyceps mushrooms for a natural boost, focus, rest, and mix them for even a better experience. Visit shop.knownaturals.com or today. Use code TigerBait10, all one word, TigerBait10, and you're going to get 10% off your order. Know your cannabinoids, know your experience, KnowNaturals. And my guy there sent me a package full of samples, and I'm anxious to try Rest. In fact, I might try them tonight. And of course, these are all legal and shipped discreetly to your door. Give KnowNaturals an opportunity to earn your business, and they're not expensive. Go to knownaturals.com and check them out. Let's see. Let me scroll down here. Get some more questions in here. Hanny, did you know that Chris Jackson and Ben McDonald are tied for the highest career free throw percentage in LSU history at 91%?
Well, I would have guessed Chris Jackson at 91%. I don't remember Ben McDonald shooting free throws. I know he played basketball. Ed Palubinskas, taught those free throws for a long time, man. But I was in school. Chris Jackson and I are roughly the same age. He got here a year before I did. And he was one of the most exciting basketball players I ever saw. And he was as close to automatic. I think, as Mahmoud Abdul-Rauf, Mike, I think he has one of the top 5 NBA seasons for free throws. It's like him, Calvin Murphy, and Mark Price, all shot somewhere around 94% for one, or 93% for one NBA season. So he was one of the all-time greats. Ben was
I'll tell you this, Charlie, because you and I grew up the same age range, and until Joe Burrow, and of course Tyrann Mathieu's in there, but Chris Jackson was the guy. I mean, and I'm not old enough to have seen Pete Maravich in person, and so the guys, the Boomers, and I'm not being, the Boomers, that's their guy, but when I see some of the statues being brought out there, and I get Shaq, and as good as Shaq was, I think Chris Jackson was better at LSU.
He was, because his now Shaq was National Player of the Year as a sophomore, and he was awesome. I don't want to take anything away from Shaq, but Chris was so exciting. They were running. I remember the first SEC game he played. For some reason, they were playing it in December, and they were playing in Florida, and he was 6'1", and that's if he stood up real straight. They were throwing alley oops to the guy. I've never seen a better shooter off the bounce at the college level. Maybe Steph Curry, but those 2 years, man, he was so exciting. Everybody went to the game. LSU was good. They weren't great. They were better than some of the Maravich teams, not as good as maybe Dale's Final Four teams, but they were exciting, man. And he was worth the price of admission, because he would come down there, cross over, put it up from 22 feet when not everybody was shooting a ton of threes like they are now, and he was just great.
Every time you move, you try to purge and throw a lot of stuff away, and you don't want to bring a lot of stuff with you that doesn't matter anymore. I've got VHS tapes of those games, Jefferson Pilot, Ole Miss. It's funny seeing Steve Snyder on the call on some of those. But man, I wore those out, and I still, at least once a year, will go on YouTube and do a deep dive on Chris Jackson LSU basketball games. It's just there was nothing better that I ever saw at LSU basketball. Again,
I've got those same games on tape. I just don't have a VCR anymore, so I can't. I'm holding on to the VHS tapes, not because I have a VCR anymore. I just don't. It's just like that era it's like a keepsake almost. No, it was. We went to the UNLV game when they played Larry Johnson and that group, who won the national championship. And LSU beat them. I think it was 107-105 on Super Bowl Sunday when the Super Bowl was down in New Orleans, and that was the year Loyola Marymount game, which I was at. We taped those games before we went to them, and we watched them over and over and over again. That Loyola Marymount game remains the best college basketball game I've ever seen in person.
Yeah. And then you had the UNLV. I had those games both on a tape.
Yeah. Then you know that if you got the CBS copy of the Loyola Marymount game, they were coming from another event, so they got there late. So you don't have Shaq's 5 blocks in 5 possessions against Hank Gathers, and so you got to have an original full game copy. If you taped it off TV, you don't have that. I was in the arena, and Hank Gathers, God rest his soul, great player, went in there 5 times. Shaquille blocked 5 shots, and I said, man, there's no way. And Gathers kept coming back at him, ended up scoring 40 points. He's a great, great player. It was all LSU could do to beat him that day.
And if you remember that year too, the thought was that Stanley Roberts was actually the better basketball player, and that we know
he was the better offensive basketball player because he had some low post moves. And remember, he was really like 2 years older than Shaquille. I think they were a class apart.
And he had to sit out a year.
He had to sit out a year, and so he had worked on some low post moves. He had softer hands than Shaquille at that point. He could catch and turn and shoot. He had up and under moves. Shaq was just a dunker as a freshman.
By the way, Shaq says that publicly all the time.
Right. He'll tell you. Shaq was the better athlete. He's a better defensive player for sure. But that first year, Stanley had some game. He couldn't stay out of foul trouble because he was never in great shape. And that was the one year. I remember this, that the SEC experimented with 6 fouls to foul out, and the big guy still stayed in foul trouble the whole year. It was the only year they did that. If it would have been 5 fouls that year, they'd have been down probably 25% of their minutes than what they had.
One more bill to pay. Alumni Hall. Tiger fans, go to the best place for all your LSU gear. Alumni Hall. Shop their store in Perkins Row, right off Blue Bonnet. Code TigerBait, all one word. You're going to get 10% off your purchase at the register, or if you go to alumnihall.com, and they've got the new LSU Sweet 16 t-shirts in stock. They've got some great polos from Antigua that just arrived in the store today. They've got all the LSU baseball jerseys in every color. My favorite, the gray one. Charlie, I don't know what your favorite color is, but I like the grays. They got the pinstripes, the gold, the purple, and all the youth jerseys. Their number one seller. Hall Pass Rewards program, get on that. And again, a beautiful store right there in Perkins Row. Stay TigerBait again, and you'll get 10% off in store. But your favorite LSU jersey? Mine's the gray.
Well, it's got to be the gold, only because the Morris game, and I remember the first time they ever brought those things out. My 1996 regional, they're playing Austin Peay, and Dan Canaveri, who's a good friend of mine, we do a podcast, and of course was an assistant coach on the team, had made a deal to get them some gold jerseys that they could break out for the regional. And they came out there in those things on Thursday to play Austin Peay, and everybody went, "What the hell is that? Never seen them before." And it's like everybody thought, "No, those are ugly." Well, they won. They brought them back 2 days later. They won. They won the final game of the regional. They wore them again, and then they wore them throughout the whole College World Series. And of course, Morris homered, and now they've become a part of LSU lore. If they lose the game, they lose a game in the regional, they lose the game in the College World Series, we might not have seen the gold jerseys again, but boy, they stuck after that.
Now, when did it become a Sunday thing?
That was as I remember, that was sometime during the Maneri era that they just decided to start wearing them exclusively on Sundays. I can't remember the exact year. I'm pretty sure it was either year 2 or year 3 of Paul Maneri's tenure. I don't remember. They wore the golds a little bit when Smoke was there, but Smoke, that was when they were wearing the blacks until Bertman came out and said, we're not wearing, that was for basketball too. A few years later, they would experiment with some black jerseys with purple and gold trim, and the fans didn't like them at all. And Bertman said, "No, that's it with that." So I think it was sometime after the black jerseys were retired that the gold jerseys became permanent on Sundays.
I like the gray because it's the 91, the first one.
Yeah, that's right. They were the road team.
Yep. Mike, thoughts on the new defensive line transfer? Well, look, you're talking about a guy who's 6'3". What is his exact weight? I mean, I've seen him listed anywhere from
305 is what I've seen.
Yeah, I listed him at 310 in my story. That's what ESPN had him at. I had someone trying to tell me he was actually 270. Look, he started 6 games last year. Again, he's a body, and look, they need him. To me, there's nothing wrong with that pickup at all. You've got to get some guys in there. You got to have some bodies, and a guy who's played at that level, started in big time college football. You don't sneeze at that at all. Just need a couple more.
Give me 15 snaps a game. 15 snaps a game is all I ask.
Dane Bergeron, purple jersey with pinstripe pants are the best looking unit. I like a lot of them. I like the white with the pinstripes. Charlie, I don't know how often do you pay attention much to Mulkey and her team?
Oh yeah, I've watched more. I mean, I watched women's basketball when Sue was here. Sue and I were friends. Because she would come out to some of the events that we would do. We'd go out sometime when they were selling tickets, stuff like that. So I got to know Sue Gunner pretty well. And when Simone got to campus, we saw a lot of games. But I've watched probably more. There's so many more games on TV now than were on then. And yeah, I've watched their compelling basketball games. Their games with South Carolina, the games in the tournament last year. I watched their regular season game from start to finish with Tennessee this year when they were up in Knoxville. I think it was only the 5th time they won in Knoxville. They're a lower seed, but they're a favorite in the game against UCLA. UCLA's got a 6'7" post player that's going to be a problem for LSU. But yeah, I'm watching enough that I'm actually doing a little bit of scouting. I watched UCLA.
I did the same.
I've seen Caitlin Clark play. Obviously a bunch of times.
Well, look, they've got their hands full with Colorado, but obviously ABC, ESPN is really setting the table for a big Monday night audience if they get what they want, and it's an LSU Iowa rematch. I watched that UCLA Creighton game. I think if LSU plays their best game, I think they can take care of UCLA. I think Reese inside, even though there's a height differential. And of course, Morrow and Haley and all that. But yeah, John Sibley Butler with a super chat. Thank you for that. Vernell Singleton might be one of the best basketball players to play at LSU. Is he forgotten from Jackson? No, he's not forgotten. One of the all-time favorites for LSU basketball fans.
Vernell was also in school the same time I was, and he was on those Shaq teams. He was an unbelievable athlete. He was a great leaper. He was a terrific rebounder. As his career went on, and he was a good defender. As his career went on, he got a little bit. He got better with his outside shooting. He got to the point where he was a pretty dependable shooter from 12 to 15 feet. Not quite as good as he played alongside Wayne Sims. And when Wayne Sims was there, God rest his soul too, Sims was probably good from 17 to 18 feet. He had a pretty consistent jump shot, and Singleton just a little bit inside of that. And they presented really good protection for Shaquille in there because they were both real physical players. But Sims was the better shooter. Singleton was the better leaper. He was one of those guys. He'd go up and clean the glass, and remember the Snoopy Band-Aid. He was a real fan favorite
on the shoulder. Then you had Ronnie Henderson come in through there in that time period.
Henderson came in after that. There was what I call the Gert year in '93 when Gert Hammock was Player of the Year in the Southeastern Conference, and they made it to the finals of the SEC tournament. That was the last time they'd done that until Wade's group did it a few years ago. I loved LSU
By the way,
basketball, man.
I'm gonna tell you this: Sunday in the PMAC, and of course, the media now sits up above for normal in the season, men's and women's. But the NCAA mandates that the media be on the court, press row, and there be a legit press row. And so I was basically on the 50-yard line for both games. That game Sunday was as loud as I've ever been in the PMAC. And to that point, I think the loudest that I've ever heard it was in '86. I was there for the Memphis game. That was the loudest. That was the loudest I ever heard the PMAC. I was there for the Kyle Macy Kentucky games. Family had season tickets from '77 on. Didn't miss any games. That PMAC on Sunday for the in the second half. There's some one of my young guys that writes for me, does recruiting updates, and other younger guys. They were saying their ears were hurting. Now my ears are not as sensitive as theirs because I played drums as a child, and many rock concerts back when they were actually loud. But their ears were hurting. That's how loud it was in the PMAC for the women's game Sunday.
They called it Deaf Dome for a reason. Look, this is not the most loyal fan base in college basketball, okay? You got to give them something. They won't just go out there. The football team, they're going no matter what. Baseball team, they're going no matter what. The basketball team, if they don't win, they won't go. But when they do win and they do go, it can be a really, really intimidating home court advantage. You listed some games. I could give you that Marymount game, the UNLV game. When Duke came here with Christian Laettner, when LSU made that run to tie the game in the second half and Krzyzewski had to call timeout, that probably the loudest I've ever heard it. And, of course, Laettner hit a couple of threes, and that was that. But when LSU was making the run, man, it was great. A couple of those Arizona games with John Brady when they upset them when they were number one. I could go on and on. But when it's right, it's a really special atmosphere.
John Silly Butler, by the way, thank you for that super chat again. Before I let you go, Charlie, this whole brouhaha, Kim Mulkey, Washington Post, any thoughts on that? Anything you want to chime in?
I'd really like to. I'd like to read the article before I pass any judgment on it. I read the piece he did on Brian Kelly. I didn't think it was a hit piece as much as it was kind of unnecessary. He was pointing out the salary discrepancy between the football coach and a staffer on campus. I'm sorry. Yes, the football coach is going to make more money than anybody else.
Well, that's a societal thing, Charlie. You could do that same story at every major college town in America.
Every single business in America, Mike. There's a CEO and there's a guy that works at the bottom level. You know, I didn't think it was a piece that necessarily needed to be done, but it was factual. So I want to see what it says before.
Yeah, but it's one of these deals where it's like, okay, that's private funds. Okay, what's next? Are you gonna, start getting calling out wealthy people and upset by the fact that they spend $25,000 a year on their Mardi Gras crew, or their country club membership, or their boat, and not writing a check to the local food bank? I mean, it's to me that's look, the main thing here is this guy is a South Carolina graduate, and I think a lot of these pieces there's a certain aim at Mulkey and the demographic, and a lot of it's to benefit another coach in the SEC. But that's my take.
Well, Mulkey's been out there as a villain before. She was a villain during COVID because she spoke her mind about what she believed. Some of that stuff she was right about. She was a villain during the Brittany Griner incarceration in Russia because some people thought she wasn't doing enough, and their relationship certainly has cooled out since their time at Baylor. So she's been fitted for the villain's role before. The thing is, she don't back down from anything.
By the way, Charlie, on every single one of those things you listed, there's a whole backstory to the Brittany Griner thing, that because Kim will not air it out, the truth behind that, and there's people out there that know it. I know parts of it, most of it. It's really unfair to her, but it's a shame. But
well, there are people that don't like her for those two situations. So, like I said, she's been fitted for the villain hat before. Before we go off the deep end on what this article will or won't say, I want to read it, and then I'll be happy to talk about it, what I think about it after I read it.
Absolutely. All right, Charlie. Thank you for filling tonight, going overtime, and we did a great 20-minute show, just he and I. Too bad I don't have a recording of it, but we had some fun there. But I think we got most of it back around for you guys once we finally realized that we weren't actually live from about 8 o'clock to 8:20. But still, we almost did a full hour show. Thanks again. Thanks to all you guys tuning in. Hit that like button on the way out if you enjoyed the show. And we'll see you guys next week. Good night.